This is the Parkinson's Fight Club, a podcast dedicated to empowering and inspiring those living with Parkinson's disease. I'm your host, Jamie Bryson. Wow, so this is it, the first episode. I feel like it's been a long time coming. You'll hear more about the journey that brought us to this moment as we move forward. But during these first few episodes, we're going to tell that story. So hope you'll tune in with us. So I'm super excited to be here with my first guest, who happens to also be my wife. But first, I guess I should introduce myself, since we don't know each other yet. So I'm Jamie Bryson, and I like long walks on the beach. I knew you would laugh at that. I'm just kidding about that. I'm a father of 3 awesome boys, and shout out to my youngest, who is actually having his 5th birthday today. The other 2 are ages 10 and 13. Can you believe we have a teenager?
No, it's hard to understand,
it's
honestly.
Crazy. So I'm also a husband to my beautiful bride. She's my rock. She's my everything. I also work full-time. I'm self-employed in the real estate industry. I'm a PhD dropout. I have 2 master's degrees, which are not relevant to my line of work at all, which is fun.
But we're helpful in life.
And I also have the student loans to show for it. I'm also an endurance athlete. I have competed in triathlons, including 2 full Ironmans and a bunch of 70.3s. The bike is definitely my happy place, so that's where I like to be. And lately, I've really been focusing on doing some mountain biking and gravel biking. And you guys will hear more about my journey when it comes to endurance sports and how Parkinson's has affected that, and how I'm pushing forward in spite of all of that. So I have young onset Parkinson's disease, or YOPD as we call it. I was diagnosed in April of 2021 at the age of 38, just before I turned 39.
Happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday. I'm also a cancer survivor, which we will talk about as well. So now I have the distinguished pleasure of introducing my very first guest on the podcast. This right here, sitting across from me, is Christy, my wife. She is what holds our family together. She's the glue. She's the best mom to our boys. She also works full time, somehow manages to keep it all together, and somehow continues to look absolutely beautiful. She's a registered nurse. She spent 15 years in the NICU, PTSD much on that. And now, thankfully, she's working from home, working for the insurance company. She's still doing NICU case management, but not in the environment of ICU. So a little bit less stress there. And thankfully, that happened before everything else that we're about to talk about happened. People a lot of times ask us, we both work from home. People a lot of times will ask us, did we start working from home because of the pandemic? But we were actually ahead of the curve on that one, because both of us were already working from home before that happened. So
yeah, and it's not often that a nurse gets to work from home. So I have an envied position by a lot of my former friends. Well, they're still my friends, but former colleagues.
Yeah, she's totally hooked some people up with not hook, you can't hook people up with the job necessarily like that, but she's definitely helped some people apply.
Recruiting. I like to recruit.
Because there's a lot of people who want that job.
Bring people over to the other side.
Yeah. So I'm super excited to have Christy here for these first few episodes, as she has experienced all of this with me, and I think her perspective will be great for a lot of people, hopefully, in our audience who may not have Parkinson's, but who may be married to someone that has Parkinson's, or maybe they're a parent or a sibling or just a good friend. So because the reality is that we don't go through this by ourselves. We don't live in a vacuum. So it'll be good to have you here to talk about what it was like for you. All right, so let's jump into this first episode. Tell me or tell us, how did it start? How did all of this start for us? What do you remember about early spring of 2021?
Well, thanks for that introduction, by the way. It's very nice, the compliments. So back in spring of 21, we're still in a global pandemic, still muddling through. We were fortunate enough to live in a place where our kids were back in school with some restrictions. So it was pretty rough there for a while, 2020, as it was for everyone, with working from home and 3 kids at home and trying to do school at home. And so the background was kind of a baseline layer of stress, and then COVID, obviously affecting some of our friends and family members, specifically your mom.
Mm-hmm.
It's about spring break, early end of February, early March. Your mom got really sick, I remember, with COVID and was hospitalized. And at that point, a lot of people were not winning the battle. There weren't treatments and therapeutics readily available, depending on where you lived in the country. And she's in another state, so she was hospitalized, and you were really stressed, trying to figure out what was going on with her, and from afar and on the phone, and calling the nurses station, and trying to get updates, third-party updates from your stepdad. Was
trying to get him to go to the emergency room because
he was sick too.
Just from couple thousand miles away, whatever it is.
Yeah. So
I just remember pacing back and forth in the house, I was going to wear a rut in the floor.
Yeah. It was intense, all that time at home, and thankfully we like each other. So all that time at home was a blessing. In disguise, but the stress level was slowly ramping up, and then she was on the verge of, I think, going to the ICU.
She never made it to the ventilator, but she was on high flow cannula, and first couple of days she was in the hospital, it was getting worse, and then you kind of wait for that moment where she planes kind of hits a plane and then starts to go back down. And luckily that did happen. And, she ended up getting out of the hospital. She was there for about 10 days.
Yeah, but we took a trip to kind of a local, well, not super local, 6 hours away. 4, 5,
well,
6.
Everything in Texas is 6 hours away.
Texas is big, so you got to drive everywhere. But went to a theme park. We had walked around, running after kids. And then I remember that night we were in the hotel, and you started.
Well, I remember, even before that, I remember we were walking around this theme park, and I'd been having a good bit of back trouble.
Yeah, it was back
just
pain.
From back pain, just from all of my running and triathlons and stuff. Even though 2020, there were no races because everything was canceled. Also, the first part of 2021, I was supposed to do a race that was canceled, but I still, tried to keep training and stuff, and just had been having a good bit of pain in my back. So I just remember walking around the theme park, and my back was hurting, and we sat down somewhere, and I noticed that my leg was shaking. And I was like, oh, that's weird.
I guess I don't remember that as much as I remember trying to go to bed at night, and it's like, why don't you stop? I guess I thought when you're sitting down, it's kind of nervous energy at first, how people kind of tap their foot, shake their leg. But when we went to sleep that night, I was like, why can't you stop?
Well, I mean, it started, and I noticed that I didn't notice it when I was walking, but it was kind of like a resting tremor, I guess, where I would sit down, and if I was still, it would start doing that. And of course, I didn't know if this was like a temporary thing, a permanent thing. Like I had no idea, right? I just thought maybe my back was causing some problem with my leg and maybe a nerve was getting pinched or something. So I think what you're remembering is that we were in the bed trying to go to sleep and it was a problem. Like it was disruptive and we were like, okay, so this isn't going away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we ended up coming home and, I think it was going on in the car on the way home. I don't remember it really stopping, but movement was helping, moving around.
I don't have a lot of memory of that drive, but I do remember that we were, like, hey, we need to get you in to see a orthopedic specialist because we thought we were really like focused in on the back as being the culprit.
Maybe you hurt your back. It must be that. And honestly, I didn't think, it was weird, but I didn't think too much of it because you have some weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean.
A lot of times, and plus being a nurse, you're like, you're not a 1-pound baby on a ventilator.
Yeah.
Your bone's not sticking out. You're okay.
It definitely didn't seem emergent at the time. So we got back from that trip, and I did get an appointment to see an orthopedic, and he walked in, and you weren't there with me, so because you were working. But I sat there, and he came in and kind of looked at me. I think he had a student with him too, and he just kind of was looking at my leg, and he was like checking my reflexes and stuff, and just kind of looking kind of like perplexed. And he looks at me and he goes, "This is not an orthopedic issue." And I just remember, like, my heart sank when he said that because I was like, oh, okay, this is not good, Well,
I think he said something about you need to see a neurologist.
Yes, that was the next thing that he said was, I'm going to refer you to a neurologist. And I was like, oh, my God, I have to go to a neurologist. Like, it was, freaked me out big time. I don't know if you remember me calling you and telling you that and what went through your head.
Yeah, I do, but I was thinking neurologist for a pension, like, I don't, I thought surely it was some kind of injury, like being athletic and being active and, that this is not,
Yeah. Well, as soon as I do remember that as soon as I told you about it and we were like, we need to go see a neuro, the guy said, he gave me a referral or whatever. And we thought, okay, let's not wait. I think we said, let's not wait around for this neuro to call us. Let's be proactive and try to find an appointment somewhere.
Yeah.
And we live in kind of a big area, a big metro area. So.
Well, it was a couple days. And I remember that was on a Friday. And then I remember on Sunday, it's like it was just incessantly like it would not stop.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I was going to bring up.
Making you nervous. And
so that day is the day that I started really kind of freaking out in my head, I started thinking I had a tumor in my brain. I was like, what is going on? And I was like, maybe this is an emergency. Maybe we need to go to the ER. And I actually have a video that I took that day of my leg just to kind of show you what we were dealing with. So let me bring this up here. If I hit, yeah. So that was that day.
I love how there's kids' pajamas on the coffee table.
Yeah, they just, you know how they are. So that's kind of what I was dealing with. And that's my full leg was shaking. And you can imagine that, like, that freaks you out. Like, what in the world is going on here? What's wrong with me? And so you ended up agreeing to take me to the ER. So we go to the ER. And of course, everybody knows how fun that is.
Well, yeah, and it was a Sunday, and, I worked in hospitals for 15 years before working in insurance, and I knew of a facility that had a neuro ICU, and I thought, well, it's a weekend, so they might have a neuro on call, because, healthcare is what it is, and it's a process to get non-emergent treatment for, like, a neurology referral, so it can take weeks, months, to get connected and all that kind of stuff, So we went over there on a Sunday, and
our goal was kind of like, we need to get in front of a neuro. So we went to a place that we thought that would happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And that did happen.
It did happen, yeah. And so And so what happened, we get in there, the ER doctor is like, man, this is not something that I know anything about. He looked a little freaked out by it, I think.
Yeah, he was very concerned and like really honest, and that this was not his area of expertise, and he was going to try to get a neuro on call to come see you.
So he's like, I'm going to go try to get a neuro that's here to come see you. But in the meantime, they realized that I was kind of freaking out. Like I was, obviously laying on the hospital bed with my legs shaking like crazy. And yes, I was stressed. I was extremely stressed at that moment. And so they gave me some Ativan and I believe something else too.
Just some anti-anxiety.
Yeah.
Did some blood work,
Maybe some Valium or something. I don't remember exactly, but I do know that Ativan was one of them.
Muscle relaxer, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it was. Muscle relaxer. So we waited a little bit, and then in pops in this neurologist. And she walks in the room, and she looks at me for, 30 seconds, a minute?
Maybe.
And she looks at me and she says, "You have anxiety."
Sir, you have anxiety.
Yeah. And we were just kind of like,
Yes, I have anxiety. I mean, I have this physiological problem going on that I'm concerned about because I don't know what it is. But I don't think that's the main issue here.
And okay, so let's just be honest for a second. Like, we're not dumb. Like, we had been Googling stuff. Like, I had been on the internet, and I had Googled tremor and
resting
tremor and all of that. And I was aware that there is a psychological issue where people can have tremors that are caused psychologically. And I also knew that when you do have a tremor like that, if you get distracted, it'll stop.
It goes away, yeah.
And so that doctor did actually try to distract me. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what she was doing. She was making me like look at something or count backwards or something. She was making me do something to kind of not think about my leg. And guess what?
It didn't work.
It didn't stop. So that's why I don't understand why she just had to proclaim to me that I just had anxiety. And so I said, okay, well, do I need to follow up with you or somebody else here in the neurology? And she was like, yeah, you can follow up if you want to. Kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, you have to think, like, when you go into the ER, like, they call it, like, treat 'em and street 'em for a reason, so.
That sounds so terrible.
Well, it's like they try to get people, like, either in or you're out. You're not going to be held up here very long unless it's our fault and we're keeping you here. But,
and it was still COVID era, so.
Yeah, and so.
There's all of that going on,
and also, like, a neurologist is looking for a reason to admit you, right? So, and you don't seem like whatever's going on with you is a reason in her mind that you need to be admitted for treatment.
And that's true.
And this can all be done outpatient. But,
I was just shocked that she didn't say 100% you need to follow up. She was just kind of like nonchalant.
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, sure, if you want to.
But, in between there, you're like, is there any way it could be Parkinson's?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, like I said, I had been on all over Dr. Google.
And she said, no, there's absolutely no way this is Parkinson's. Because I remember, like, leaving the parking lot. I remember being in the parking lot, right, walking to the car, and I was like, well, at least she said there's no way it could be Parkinson's. And you're like, eh.
One thing I don't remember, so we ended up getting an appointment with a neurologist, and I know that your mom was actually the one who ended up getting us that appointment. But did we have that appointment before the emergency room, or did we get that afterwards?
No, afterwards, because you're like, I don't feel satisfied.
Oh, yeah, I for sure knew I wanted to see somebody. I did not believe that lady for 1 second.
Yeah, and so, this just goes back to, like, having to be your own healthcare advocate because, we could have just taken what they said and be like, oh, well, we need to be on, it's been COVID, your mom's been in the hospital, you've been really stressed, you probably do just have anxiety, maybe you should get treated for anxiety and see what happens.
Well, and if it was like a minor tremor, like in my hand, like maybe my hand was shaking it a little bit, maybe that is what we would have done. But like my leg was literally just like uncontrollably shaking.
Well, and I do have to say that leg tremor is atypical of Parkinson's. A lot of times
it is not normally the
presenting sign, yeah.
Yes.
So normally it's like in the hands.
Which we know that there were some other signs, which we'll talk about, that I had that we were just kind of like oblivious to. But,
so all that is led to like a dismissive diagnosis is what I would call it.
Yeah.
Because, if they can't treat you and treat you and they can't admit you, then they don't like follow up outpatient if you want.
So I want to say maybe a week went by-ish before I got to go and see this other neurologist that your mom had made the appointment with. And this is a practice that kind of has multiple offices around the area.
Yeah, it's like one doctor who goes to different locations to serve different communities, yeah. And
so the one that I ended up going to with the appointment that I got was in a facility that's not near the Dallas area. I mean, it's on the outskirts of Dallas, and sort of a more...
And we live pretty far out, so...
Yeah, it's a more rural area, I guess you would say. So, again, I ended up going to that appointment by myself because you just couldn't get off work. And we still didn't 100% know what we were dealing with, obviously. So, and it was important to me. I didn't want to wait until you could go. I wanted to go as soon as possible. Like, I was just like, I don't care. I'll go by myself.
I think
you
couldn't even get in with her. You were seeing the nurse practitioner.
That's true, yeah. So my appointment was not with the doctor. It was with the nurse practitioner. So we'll tell that story real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit and then introduce what we're going to talk about in the next episode. But so I just remember got in my truck. I had a new truck, a new red truck that I had just gotten in February. And
Valentine's Day. It was his Valentine's Day present.
Yeah, it was my ice storm present that I got a good deal because they weren't selling any cars because everyone was trapped in their house. So anyway, I just remember driving and thinking, this is kind of sad because I should be really enjoying this really nice truck. And I'm sitting here, basically pondering my life, like wondering what's going to happen to me. And so... Anyway, I got to the place and I walked in. It's like an older facility. And I just remember walking into that waiting room and being like, oh my God, I'm in a methadone clinic. Like I legit thought I was at a methadone clinic because, and I'm not trying to be mean or rude or whatever, but this was a rough crowd.
Yeah.
And I was by far the youngest person in the room. And, there were some people who were, in wheelchairs and some people who were, using walkers. People just couldn't get around very well. But I think most of them were there because it's a headache clinic, right? They were there to get their headache shots or whatever. So I felt super uncomfortable sitting in there. I mean, the decor of the place looked like it hadn't been changed since 1975. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? And so I finally got called back and, the nurse practitioner is looking at me. She's typing on her little computer, just, clicking away, observing me and asking me to move and do certain things. And at some point she stops and looks up at me and she goes, I'm just going to be honest. This is like more than what I can deal with or more than what I feel comfortable, handling. So I'm going to go get the doctor and see if she can come in here and talk to you for a minute because I feel like this is a little bit above me here. And I was like, okay. I mean, in a way I felt good about that because I felt like, okay, cool, I get to see the doctor. But in another way I was like, okay, that's probably not a good thing. So the doctor comes in and she introduces herself and she calls herself a movement disorder specialist, which at the time I have no idea what that means. But come to find out, that's a really good thing for people who have Parkinson's. And she did say she specialized in Parkinson's, I believe, she told me. So she spent about 5 minutes with me doing various things with my arms and my legs and making me walk up and down the hall. This thing, yeah. This little quacker thing, this little, I would say 5 minutes tops went by and she goes, you have Parkinson's. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, so gentle with the...
Yeah. I mean, and if I'm being honest, I thought that was a pretty good possibility based on the research I had done. But she's like, I'm pretty sure you have Parkinson's, 99%, whatever she said, but we're going to do some tests to confirm. And so, she ordered a CT. No, she ordered an MRI.
And a DAT scan.
And she said, in the meantime, I'm going to give you this medication. I'm going to prescribe you some medication that should help with your tremor. And that medication was trihexyphenidyl, which is a super weird name for a drug, and come to find out, a very weird drug.
Well, it's very antiquated.
Yeah.
It's not really used.
She said the reason why she gave me that was because she didn't want it to interfere with the results of the DAT scan. She wanted to make sure that the DAT scan was,
clean.
Where it was good.
Give an accurate picture. So
yeah.
I will point out that, with Parkinson's diagnosis, which we found out later, that it's really clinical based. Like your doctor's assessment, like what she said to you, that's pretty much how they are not diagnosing certain individuals. But the DAT scan is what, confirms it. But these scans are pretty pricey and hard to get, to a facility that actually does them, get them approved by insurance for medical necessity kind of thing. So there are a lot of barriers to getting that done. So a lot of times doctors shy away from even ordering those tests to confirm. So there's a lot of people who can end up in the, gray area of the, clinically it looks like this, but we're not confirmed. And, thankfully, because of your age, I think mainly she did, push to get that done. So,
and thankfully my wife works for the insurance company because I think that, we have really good insurance, which is not true for a lot of people in the United States, unfortunately. But she said some other things during that appointment that I was kind of like, oh, duh, So she talked about my, I had been having this weird issue with my left hand. So the tremor is my left leg, okay? Mm. I've been having some weird issues with my left hand for a while that I didn't know what it was. And I had kind of made up a story in my head about it because I had a lot of arthritis issues for a bit, just swimming a lot, and triathlon can take its toll on your body. And so I was having shoulder pain, I was having wrist pain and different things. And I did have a doctor that was treating me for, what's it called? The psoriatic arthritis. Yeah. So I was on some medication for that, which helped with the pain on that stuff. But I still had this weird thing where my hand would contort itself. And when I wasn't doing anything, if I wasn't thinking about it, it would just kind of curl up. And
it wasn't super overt, I
could as soon as I realized it was going on, I could straighten my hand out.
Yeah, it wasn't stuck or anything.
It didn't get stuck like that. It was just kind of it would do it on its own. And so I wasn't really that concerned about it. And I thought, well, maybe I just kind of got in the habit of doing something with my hand to make it so that the pain from my wrist was better. Because, sometimes if you've got a joint that hurts, if you hold it in a specific position, it can feel a little bit better. And so I just kind of said, oh, okay, well, that's probably what I was doing. And just
Yeah, it hurts when I move like this, so don't move like that.
Yeah, like my subconscious was doing that, But she's like, yeah, that's something called dystonia. And I was like, okay, got to get my phone out and Google that word. And then she also, she made me walk back and forth, like I mentioned, in the hallway. And something that I had not noticed about myself at all, which was when she would do that, she would try to make me think about something. So she would make me say my alphabet backwards or count backwards or something to try to occupy my brain to not think about walking. And when I would do that up and down the hall, my left arm would stop swinging. Mm-hmm. It would just stay there, stay still. And I also noticed that when she was pointing that out, that's when my wrist would curl up too, when I was thinking about something else. And so I'm going, dang, I actually did have some stuff going on before this that had been going on for a while, I think.
Yeah, but it was subtle, and sometimes you get used to the way people are or the way people walk or And plus, we have 3 kids and 2 jobs, and
people have their quirks, right?
And
and sometimes you just think, like even with our son, he's having to go see some specialists for some things that we're dealing with him, and it's the same thing. Like he's kind of had some little quirky things about him that we didn't necessarily think much of, but now we know that there actually could be an issue that needs to be addressed. And so I don't think that's super uncommon. I mean, I don't know what the average age or the average amount of time that goes by from when a person first starts having Parkinson's symptoms to when they actually get diagnosed. But for me, it was potentially a really long time if you want to believe my current doctor, which we'll get into sometime in the future. But I had clinical depression as long ago as 2007. So obviously that's a related symptom of Parkinson's, or it can be. Mm-hmm. And so because it's a dopamine deficiency, right? So yeah, that was a very, that experience kind of shook me at my core, And I just remember driving on the way home, just being like, what
just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, at that point, I feel like I was still like, I
in denial.
Be the queen of denial. Yeah.
You definitely did. You were like, oh, it's probably not that. It's not. I don't know for you as much as it was denial as it was just like you just didn't want that to be true.
Yeah, those get mixed though, because it's like especially with nursing, medical background, you think, there's no way that's what this is. They don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
We need somebody else who knows what they're talking about. This is just like the ER situation. She's a Parkinson's doctor, a movement disorder specialist. So, of course, she's going to be, every surgeon wants to do surgery. So, it's the same thing. So, you can talk yourself into or out of pretty much anything.
So, I think maybe in your head, you went back to her and thought, well, maybe she's right and this doctor's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you bounce back and forth. We had already been through a lot of, emotional duress from the previous year. And, I thought, well, maybe it is just like extreme stress because there's like, psychosomatic issues to where your mind is so stressed that it comes out in something in your body. And, but, at one point I remember thinking, oh, I really hope it's not some kind of brain tumor, as well. So the MRI and stuff, because at that point I don't know, until you have like the testing done, I didn't feel like
you weren't ready to fully accept it until after we got confirmation. And I get that. I remember you being like a little confused about me because I think what happened to me in that moment was like I almost had like a sense of calm over me. I've heard people say that getting a diagnosis can be empowering and I think that's true because I think that it wasn't a fully, diagnosis backed up by the test yet, but there was still something empowering to me about knowing what the heck was wrong with me, because like that's just how I am. It's like I need to know. Just tell me what the problem is. Just tell me how bad it is. Just give it to me straight, and then I can figure out how to go forward from there. But I don't like the sort of like not knowing. I don't like the meandering and wondering and I hope it's not this or I hope it's that or I hope it's not that. I just tell me what the heck it is. Tell me what I'm dealing with, and I can figure out how to get.
Yeah, but on the same token, you have like one neurologist in one setting telling you there's absolutely no way. And then you go to another person in a different setting who's like, this is what it is. So it's like you've been given this medical professional opinions by 2 people of the same, discipline. You're like, I don't know what to believe at this point. So I just feel super grateful for, everything happens like people put, I feel like God puts people in your life for a certain reason and for like such a time that you can like step up and do the role that you're supposed to do. That might happen like on various levels, throughout your life and stuff. But I feel like I was in a spot, becoming into a spot where it was transitioning, had been out of the hospital towards, available to start thinking about, your care and your needs and in a different way, because you're a strong person, like you're an Iron Man, like I don't think of you as, someone who needs help or medical help,
Yeah, but all of a sudden, after that experience, all of that came into question was, okay, what now? Like, am I ever going to get to do another triathlon? Am I ever going to be able to ride my bike again? I mean, I knew I could do it that day, but I just didn't know how long I was going to be able to do that. And that was terrifying to me, just to think that I could be losing all of my physical abilities, that it was going to get taken from me. And so I was very fearful. I had a lot of fear during that time. And I think that fear obviously manifests itself through different ways, through you emotionally and stuff. And, to the point where I'm not somebody that typically struggles with anxiety or having like panic attacks or anything like that. But I was so messed up during that time period. Like I could not, we showed up for that MRI appointment and I wouldn't get in there. I wouldn't get in it because I was like, I just can't do it. You're gonna have to sedate me. Mm. And I've done an MRI before, and I've gone through stuff like that before, and I haven't needed that. So something changed about me. I think I became someone who was sort of driven by fear a lot, and that was really affecting me in lots of different ways. But so we ended up having to reschedule that, and they had to give me Valium. So I was able to get through the MRI, and then the DAT scan. Did they sedate me for that? I can't remember.
I don't think so. No.
That was a horrible experience. I'll just be honest. If you're at all like claustrophobic or anything like that, then you're absolutely going to hate that experience, because at one point that machine was like, I could feel it touching my nose. Mm. I could feel it touching me.
Well, and you're supposed to be like still,
and I was strapped down.
Your leg is like shaking like crazy. I remember at one point I had to go in there and
you had to hold my leg down.
Lay on your legs in the scanner. Yeah.
And like I was an emotional mess during that whole thing, and like even the radiologist was like coming to try to comfort me, because at one point I was like, you got to get me out of this thing. I can't stay here. Like I was like,
it's a long experience because they do the tracer and then they do that. Yeah. So you have to sit there and take some time. So you're the whole time you're like anticipating what's going to happen next, and you can't leave. So
So where do you think? I couldn't remember like what conversations did we have with the kids about this at this point? I mean, I know they knew that I was going to get tests done, but what did they? Do you remember?
Not specifically. I just remember, when we both went to that ER visit and my parents came over and watched them, and I don't know. I don't remember really like sitting down and telling, especially not the younger two, because this was like 2 years ago and the little one was 3, and then the middle one is 10 now, so he was only 8. But our oldest is like he won the most curious kid award in kindergarten.
Can't get anything past him.
He does not miss a beat. So I feel like we
told him more.
Yeah,
but we didn't try to hide anything from them. I think we were just like maybe really vague.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't know what to tell them, honestly, at that point.
Yeah, it's just I feel like he asked something to do with why is Dad's leg shaking, or something like that to that effect. But
I don't think that they weren't as worried about it as we were, because they didn't know what the possibilities were. Nobody sat down with them and said, look, if your dad has Parkinson's, here's what might happen to him.
That you could tell them, oh, this is the diagnosis, what they're testing you for, but it has no meaning to them if they don't have any background or foundation. And, they don't think, oh, old man in a wheelchair who can't walk anymore.
And they were already like super anxious in general, like everybody else in the world, because of COVID and everything else going on. So, okay, well, I think that's a good place for us to stop for this episode, and then we can pick up next time and kind of pick up with the actual for real diagnosis, talk about what that was like. I'll give you a hint. It was totally a COVID era diagnosis. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger on that one. And then we can talk about what the process was like once we had that diagnosis and trying to figure it out from there, and what we were going to do, and figuring out medicine and figuring out lifestyle, like all of that. And a big part of my story is, as I go forward, I'm just, going to be honest with you guys about is it took me a bit to find the right doctor, and so we're going to definitely talk more about that. But going back to what your thing was earlier about being your own advocate, I think if you or anybody you know or love is experiencing anything that's unusual and has to go through a process of getting a diagnosis, that's super important that you advocate for yourself and get a second opinion or a third opinion or a fourth opinion.
Well, just keep pushing. Like, if there's something that doesn't sit right with you or you don't understand, ask the questions,
Yeah.
You have to do your homework. You can't just put your life in other people's hands and expect them to take as good of care of you as you would,
Yeah.
Or your family members. So,
and, obviously crisis mode is really hard, and we were in crisis mode for a long time. But I just want to maybe end it with this and say that there were some silver linings to that, I think, of being in crisis mode. In particular, I think that our marriage, our relationship, grew stronger, and we grew way closer together, really quickly. It was almost amazing. It's not like we were, apart, far apart, or weren't getting along before that, because we had a really good relationship before that. But there was definitely something that changed in our relationship because of that, and it changed in a really positive way.
Yeah. I would just say preoccupied with a lot of things around us. And then when something like that happens, you just get back to what's really important.
Yeah. It just forces you to focus on what's really important in life. And the other thing it makes you focus on is today.
Mm-hmm. Right now.
Yeah. And that's something that was new for me, because I was the guy that was typically always thinking about the future, and I was living in the future, and I was the one that wanted to skip all the steps and get to the thing,
Mm-hmm.
But this experience put me in a place where I just literally had to go day to day. How am I going to get through today?
Yeah.
And that went on for a long time.
Yeah.
So if that's you and you're experiencing that right now, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I can tell you. And things can get better, and you have to believe that. Yeah. So, well, hey, I am so glad you're here with me doing this, and I'm looking forward to having you with me again for the next couple of episodes. Again, next time, we will talk to you guys more about the actual diagnosis and the aftermath, I guess you could say, of that, and our doctor search, I guess I would say. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope that you will tune in next time. But before you go, I want to make sure that you know about our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group already. It's been going strong already for a couple weeks now. It's called the Parkinson's Fight Club, and you can find it at facebook.com/groups/Parkinson's Fight Club. And if you would like to just email me directly and ask me questions, or have any questions, concerns, advice, whatever, share your story with me, whatever you want to do, you can email me at jamie@theparkinsonsfightclub.com.
JAMIE.
JAMIE. Yes, good. Maybe we'll be able to throw that up on the screen for you guys too. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or whatever, I'm glad to have you as well. But we will periodically, we'll have some things to show you on the screen and whatnot. And I will be interviewing some people in the future that you guys will really want to hear from, I think. So I'm excited. I'm excited about where this is going. I'm excited that we're actually doing it. So thank you guys. See you next time.